COVID-19, Control and the Great Reset Conspiracy, the Engineered Pandemic, Seeds of a New Tyranny. They want you to believe it was a random act of nature, an unfortunate coincidence, a bat in a market, a virus jumping species, a plague that swept across the globe, necessitating unprecedented measures for the sake of public health. But pull back the curtain, peer into the shadows, and a far more sinister picture begins to emerge. COVID-19 wasn't just a virus, it was an ideological virus, meticulously crafted and strategically deployed. Who were they? The question hangs in the smoky air, unanswered, but heavy with implication. The global elites, shadowy governments, unseen hands pulling the levers of power. They are the architects of control, the masters of manipulation, the ones who benefit from chaos and fear. Their immediate goals weren't merely about safety. They were about economic restructuring, societal control, and the consolidation of power. The pandemic provided the perfect pretext. Consider the basic liberties that were suspended, one by one, like dominoes falling in a carefully orchestrated sequence. Freedom of assembly, protests silenced, gatherings banned, the right to dissent crushed under the boot of quote-unquote emergency measures. Freedom of movement, borders closed, travel restricted, citizens confined to their homes like prisoners in their own land. Bodily autonomy, mandates imposed, coercion employed, the right to choose what goes into your body stripped away in the name of the greater good. Right to work, businesses shuttered, livelihoods destroyed, economic dependence on the state manufactured under the guise of relief. Freedom of worship, churches closed, religious gatherings forbidden, spiritual solace denied during a time of unprecedented fear and uncertainty. The psychological mechanisms of compliance were chillingly effective. Fear-based manipulation, amplified by compliant media, saturated the airwaves. Propaganda, disguised as public service announcements, reinforced the official narrative, demonizing dissenters and rewarding obedience. Censorship became the norm, with dissenting voices silenced and alternative perspectives suppressed. The mantra of trust the experts was weaponized to shut down critical thinking and independent inquiry. This isn't the overt tyranny of jackboots and gulags. It's a more subtle, technologically enhanced form of authoritarianism. A world where your every move is tracked, your every purchase monitored, your every thought scrutinized. A world where dissent is punished, conformity is rewarded, and freedom is merely an illusion. They were building a digital prison, brick by digital brick, and they are using the pandemic as construction site. The seeds of a new tyranny have been sown. The question is, will we stand idly by as they take root, or will we rise up and reclaim our freedom before it's too late? The hour is late, and the shadows are long, and the stakes have never been higher. COVID-19, deconstructing the official narrative, a Trojan horse for global control. The story we were sold was simple. A bat, a wet market, a novel virus. The official narrative insists that COVID-19 emerged spontaneously from nature, a tragic but random event. But is it truly that simple? Or is it the carefully constructed facade concealing a far more disturbing reality? Let's dissect the official story, expose the contradictions, and explore the suppressed alternatives that they don't want you to consider. The origin question, accident or design? The bat soup origin story, while wildly propagated, has always been riddled with inconsistencies. Why did the virus conveniently emerge in Wuhan, a city hosting a high-security virology lab known for its research on coronaviruses? Why was there such a rapid and coordinated effort to shut down discussion of alternative theories, labeling them as quote-unquote conspiracy theories? Consider the alternatives. A lab leak theory. A leak from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, WIV. The WIV, funded in part by U.S. institutions, was engaged in gain-of-function research, which involves modifying viruses to make them more infectious or deadly. The possibility of an accidental release cannot be dismissed, especially given the WIV's documented history of safety lapses. Was COVID-19 simply an accident, a lab escape? Engineered bioweapon. Some allege COVID-19 was deliberately engineered as a bioweapon, designed to target specific populations or weaken rival nations. While the evidence for this remains circumstantial, the speed with which the virus spread and its disproportionate impact on certain demographics fuels this theory. Was it released intentionally? The planned pandemic. A disturbing theory suggests that COVID-19 was a planned release, a drill, exercise gone live. Documents like the quote-unquote Event 201 simulation, which eerily mirrored the actual pandemic, lends credence to this idea, painting a picture of powerful entities anticipating and preparing for such an event. Were we all just pawns in a game? Each of these alternatives demands scrutiny. Why were voices questioning the official narrative censored? Why were scientists who dared to investigate these possibilities ridiculed and marginalized? The suppression of dissent only deepens the suspicion that they have something to hide. The global government response, a perfectly orchestrated lockdown. The pandemic triggered an unprecedented global response. Lockdowns, mask mandates, travel restrictions, and vaccine passports. Nations with vastly different cultures and political systems adopted nearly identical policies, seemingly overnight. The perfect unison raises questions, serious questions, about the level of coordination and control. Consider the speed and uniformity. The speed with which nations implemented lockdowns and other measures was unprecedented. How could governments, supposedly acting in their own national interests, coordinate such sweeping policies with such efficiency? The role of supranational bodies. Organizations like the World Health Organization and World Economic Forum played a significant role in shaping global response. Were these bodies acting impartially, or were they pushing a specific agenda? The erosion of civil liberties. The pandemic provided the perfect justification for governments to expand their powers, restrict freedoms, and increase surveillance. Are these measures temporary, or are they a permanent feature of the new normal? The science for sale, the corruption of expertise. We're constantly told to trust the science, but what if the science was compromised, manipulated, or funded by entities with vested interests? Big Pharma, with its billions of dollars in profits from vaccines and treatments, certainly had a strong incentive to promote a particular narrative. Globalist organizations like the WEF, with their agenda of stakeholder capitalism and the Great Reset, also had a clear interest in shaping the pandemic response. Question: funding and bias. Who funded the research that shaped the official narrative? Were the conflicts of interest that influenced the conclusions? A lot of funding for the Wuhan Institute of Virology came from USAID, which has been known to be a CIA front. Suppressed data. Was data that challenged the official narrative suppressed or ignored? Were scientists who questioned the consensus silenced or marginalized? The weaponization of expertise. Was quote-unquote expertise used as a tool to shut down debate and enforce compliance? Were dissenting voices demonized and labeled as anti-science? COVID-19, a dry run for the Great Reset. Many see COVID-19 not as an isolated crisis, but as a test run or dry run for the Great Reset, a globalist agenda to transform society and the economy. The pandemic created the perfect conditions for accelerating this agenda, paving the way for a globalized authoritarian system, communism by another name, or technocratic feudalism. Ask yourself, the expansion of government power. Did the pandemic lead to a significant expansion of government power and control over our lives? The acceleration of digitalization. Did the pandemic accelerate the transition to a cashless society, digital IDs, and increased surveillance? The erosion of national sovereignty. Did the pandemic empower global institutions at the expense of national sovereignty? COVID-19 was more than just a virus. It was a catalyst for change, for control, and for the implementation of a sinister agenda. By understanding the truth about COVID-19, we can begin to dismantle the lies and reclaim our freedom. Echoes of deception from AIDS to COVID-19, a pattern of control and fear. They tell us that each crisis is unique, a black swan event defying prediction. But what if these unprecedented events are, in fact, variations on a theme? What if the COVID-19 pandemic is simply a more sophisticated, globally scaled version of a playbook tested and refined over decades? Let's rewind to the AIDS epidemic, a time of fear, uncertainty, and the rise of unprecedented government power. These parallels are not just unsettling, they are a chilling testament to the cyclic nature of control. The seeds of suspicion, conspiracy theories of origin. The official narrative of AIDS, like that of COVID-19, centered on a natural origin, a virus jumping from animals to humans. But even as scientists worked to understand the virus, whispers of a darker origins began to circulate. These whispers, often dismissed as fringe conspiracy theories, deserve a second look, not as definitive truths, but as indicators of a deep-seated distrust in authority. The Fort Detrick connection. One theory alleges that AIDS originated at Fort Detrick, a U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases. Critics point to the facility's history of biological weapons research and the possibility of an accidental release. Could a deadly virus have escaped the confines of a high-security lab, unleashing a global catastrophe? The vaccine conspiracy. Another theory links the AIDS epidemic to early polio vaccines trials in Africa. The claim suggests that contaminated vaccines administered to unsuspecting populations may have introduced the HIV virus. This narrative, while controversial, taps into historical anxieties about medical experimentation and the exploitation of vulnerable communities. The CIA's shadowy hand. Perhaps the most disturbing theory implicates the CIA in the deliberate creation or spread of the AIDS virus. According to this narrative, the virus was designed as a biological weapon to target specific demographics, such as homosexual men or African Americans. While concrete evidence remains elusive, the accusations underscore a profound distrust of government agencies and their willingness to engage in unethical practices. These theories, regardless of their veracity, highlight a crucial point. The official narrative often fails to address the underlying anxieties and suspicions of the population. The suppression of alternative explanation only fuels distrust and creates fertile ground for conspiracy theories to flourish. Fear as a weapon, manipulating public perception. Both AIDS and COVID-19 epidemics were characterized by intense fear-mongering in the media. Sensationalized headlines, alarming statistics, and the constant threat of death created a climate of panic and anxiety. This fear, whether intentionally manufactured or simply a byproduct of the crisis, was then used to justify unprecedented government interventions. Social stigma and demonization. During the AIDS crisis, homosexual men were often stigmatized and demonized as vectors of disease. This prejudice fueled discriminatory policies and hindered efforts to combat the epidemic. Similarly, during the COVID-19 pandemic, those who questioned the official narrative or refused to comply with mandates were often labeled as anti-science or selfish, further dividing society and silencing dissent. The rush to pharmaceutical solutions. Both epidemics saw a frantic race to develop vaccines and treatments. While scientific progress is crucial, the speed and intensity of these efforts raised questions about potential conflicts of interest and the prioritization of profits over safety. Were pharmaceutical companies truly motivated by public health, or were they simply seeking to capitalize on a crisis? Suppression of alternative treatments. In both cases, alternative or unconventional treatments were often dismissed or suppressed by the medical establishment. This created a sense of limited options and reinforced the dominance of mainstream pharmaceutical approaches, were effective treatments being ignored or suppressed in favor of more profitable options. In the very beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Donald Trump advocated hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin as treatments, as therapeutics, cheap and readily available. And everyone in the media said, if Donald Trump, is this what Donald Trump suggests, I'm not doing it. And this directly costs lives and has been proven to be effective. Uh, they're proven to be effective over time to fight COVID-19. The erosion of liberty, a recurring pattern. Perhaps the most concerning parallel between the AIDS and COVID-19 epidemics is the erosion of individual liberties under the guise of public health. In both cases, governments expanded their powers, restricted freedoms, and increased surveillance in the name of protecting the population. The question remains, were these measures truly necessary, or were they a means of consolidating control? Increased surveillance. The AIDS epidemic led to the implementation of contact tracing programs and mandatory testing in some areas, raising concerns about privacy and discrimination. The COVID-19 pandemic saw an even more dramatic expansion of surveillance, with governments tracking citizens' movements, monitoring their health status, and censoring dissenting voices online. Restrictions on movement and assembly. Both epidemics resulted in restrictions on movement and assembly. During the AIDS crisis, bathhouses and other gathering places for homosexual men were often closed down. The COVID-19 pandemic saw widespread lockdowns, travel restrictions, and bans on public gatherings, effectively shutting down entire societies. Mandatory medical interventions. The debate over mandatory vaccinations and treatments has been a recurring theme in both epidemics. While proponents argue that such measures are necessary to protect public health, critics raise concerns about bodily autonomy and the potential for coercion. The parallels between the AIDS and COVID-19 epidemics are undeniable. Both events have been marked by fear-mongering, social stigma, the suppression of dissent, and the erosion of individual liberties. Whether these similarities are coincidental or evidence of a deliberate strategy of control remains a matter of debate, but one thing is clear. We must learn from the past to prevent history from repeating itself. The Great Reset, engineering a global authoritarian state under the guise of crisis. A long drag. They present it as an evolution, a necessary adaptation to a changing world, a reset button for a broken system. But peel back the layers of utopian rhetoric, and you'll find a blueprint for global control, a meticulously crafted agenda aimed at dismantling national sovereignty and concentrating power in the hands of a select few. The Great Reset isn't about building back better, it's about building a global gulag. The COVID-19 pretext, a window of opportunity. The World Economic Forum, WEF, led by Klaus Schwab, openly declared that COVID-19 presented a unique window of opportunity to reshape the world. Ask yourself, a window of opportunity for whom? Certainly not for small businesses forced to shutter their doors, for families struggling to make ends meet, or for individuals stripped of their basic freedoms. The pandemic served as a perfect pretext for accelerating a pre-existing agenda, a long-term plan to fundamentally transform society and the economy. Extended lockdowns. Lockdowns weren't just about slowing the spread, they were about crushing dissent, disrupting supply chains, and creating economic chaos. The deliberate devastation of small and medium-sized business paved the way for large corporations to consolidate their dominance. Massive wealth transfer. Trillions of dollars were printed and distributed under the guise of relief. But who benefited the most? The financial elite, the well-connected corporations, and the politically powerful. The pandemic facilitated the largest upward transfer of wealth in history, exacerbating inequality and creating a new class of state-dependent citizens. Unprecedented money printing. The reckless printing of money led to inflation, devaluing savings and making it harder for ordinary people to afford basic necessities. This financial instability creates greater dependency on government assistance, further eroding individual autonomy. Universal basic income, a gilded cage. The push for universal basic income, UBI, is often presented as a compassionate solution to poverty and inequality, but look closer and you'll see a trap. UBI creates a system of state dependency where individuals are reliant on the government for their basic needs. This dependence can be weaponized, used to control behavior and suppress dissent. Remember the WEF's infamous statement, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy." This isn't about equality, it's about control. It's about abolishing private property and creating a neo-feudal system where the elites own everything and the masses are reduced to serfdom, entirely dependent on the state for their survival. Digital identity, the key to total surveillance. Vaccine passports were just the beginning. The ultimate goal is a comprehensive digital identity scheme, a digital ID that tracks your every move, your every purchase, your every interaction. This isn't just about convenience, it's about control. With a digital ID, governments and corporations can monitor your behavior in real time, censor your speech, and restrict your access to essential services. Imagine a world where your access to food, healthcare, and even the internet is contingent on your compliance with government mandates. This isn't a dystopian fantasy. It's the logical conclusion of the push for digital identity, and it's already being done in China. Think about the possibilities. Mass surveillance. Digital IDs enable governments to track citizens' movements, purchases, medical records, and online behavior with unprecedented accuracy. Social credit system. Like China's social credit system, digital IDs can be used to reward conformity and punish dissent. Citizens who express dissenting opinions or engage in undesirable behavior could be denied access to essential services. Centralized control. Digital IDs give governments and corporations the power to control every aspect of your life, from your access to money to your freedom of movement. Deconstructing the rhetoric, sustainability, equity, and building back better. They use buzzwords like sustainability, stakeholder capitalism, equity, and building back better to mask their true intentions. These terms sound appealing, but they are often used to justify policies that undermine individual freedom and concentrate power in the hands of the elite. Sustainability is used to justify restrictions on energy consumption and travel. Equity is used to justify wealth redistribution and the erosion of property rights. Building back better is used to justify the imposition of a globalist agenda. Don't be fooled by the marketing language. The Great Reset is a totalitarian power grab, a coordinated effort by unelected global elites to dismantle national sovereignty, erode individual freedoms, and establish a centralized technocratic global governance structure. It's communism by another name, a global gulag disguised as utopia. Monarch Holdings International, your beacon into the information war. In a world shrouded by deception, where truth is twisted and narratives are controlled, one company stands as a beacon of hope, Monarch Holdings International Incorporated. Are you tired of the mainstream narrative? Do you question the official story? Do you believe in the power of free speech and individual liberty? Then you're ready for Monarch Holdings. Monarch Holdings International Incorporated is more than just a holding company. We're a movement. Registered in Nevada as an S Corp, our structure allows us the agility and resilience needed to navigate the complex landscape of the information war. We strategically reinvest our resources into our mission, unwavering commitment to free speech, uncovering truth, and defending individual liberty in free markets. Unlike C Corps, S Corp status allows us to avoid double taxation and put more money directly into furthering our core values. We provide a platform for dissenting voices, support overlooked talent, and challenge the narratives that seek to control you. Through our diverse portfolio of subsidiaries, including Monarch Literary and Monarch Trends Journal, we are actively fighting back against the forces of censorship and manipulation. Our operations span business, market, and political consulting, publishing, music production, technology app development, apparel, and investment, all united by a common thread, a dedication to libertarian principles and the pursuit of truth. In Monarch Holdings, our core values are not just words on a page, they are the foundation of everything we do. Integrity, collaboration, and innovation guide our every action. We leverage cutting-edge business intelligence tools like IBM SPSS, IBM Watson AI, and Palantir to provide advanced data-driven insights and strategic recommendations. These tools aren't just for business, they're essential for uncovering hidden truths and empowering you to make informed decisions. Our consulting services offer unparalleled strategic advantages. We arm our clients with the knowledge to navigate complex challenges and thrive in an increasingly uncertain world. Monarch Literary champions free expression, giving voices to authors and artists who dare challenge the status quo. Monarch Trends Journal provides an in-depth analysis of emerging trends, helping you stay ahead of the curve and anticipate the shifts in global landscape. Monarch Holdings is uniquely positioned to serve niche markets, champion free expression, support overlooked talent, and promote freedom-oriented initiatives. We are not afraid to question, to challenge, or to stand up for what is right. We believe in the power of the individual, the importance of critical thinking, and the necessity of a free and open society. The forces arrayed against freedom are powerful, but they thrive in darkness. Monarch Holdings is lighting a match. Will you join us? Discover more about our subsidiaries, our services, and our unwavering commitment to unlocking your potential and defending your freedom. Visit us at monarchholdingsinternational.com or contact us directly. Monarch Holdings International, 349 Seneca Road, York, South Carolina, 29745, United States. 803-684-9270. Steve at monarchholdingsinternational.com. Business hours Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monarch Holdings International, illuminating truth in a world of deception. The psychological war, lasting scars and societal fractures of the COVID era. They told us it was about public health, about protecting the vulnerable. But the cost of that protection? The invisible scars that now mar our collective psyche. The psychological toll of lockdowns, mandates, and the constant barrage of fear is a wound that may never fully heal. The mental health crisis, a shadow epidemic. The statistics are stark, chilling testaments to the unseen damage, spikes in anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and tragically suicides. Across all age groups, the mental health crisis has surged, a shadow pandemic, lurking beneath the surface of the official narrative. Children robbed of their formative years, forced to mask and isolate, now grapple with learning loss, impaired social skills, and deep-seated psychological distress. Adults, stripped of their livelihoods, burdened by uncertainty, face a similar battle against despair. The elderly, isolated from loved ones, withered in loneliness, their final years robbed of joy and connection. Anxiety and depression, the constant fear-mongering, the uncertainty surrounding the virus, and the isolation of lockdowns fueled a surge in anxiety and depression rates. Many individuals who had never experienced mental health issues before found themselves struggling with debilitating symptoms. Substance abuse. The stress and isolation of the pandemic led to a surge in substance abuse as individuals turned to drugs and alcohol to cope with their anxiety and despair. Overdose deaths soared, a tragic consequence of the lockdowns. Suicides. Perhaps the most devastating consequence of the pandemic was the increase in suicides. The loss of hope, the isolation, and the economic hardship drove many individuals to take their own lives. PTSD. For some, the experience of living through the pandemic was traumatic, leading to symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. The constant fear of infection, the loss of a loved one, and the disruption of normal life left lasting scars. Societal division, the erosion of trust. Beyond the individual toll, the pandemic has inflicted severe damage on societal cohesion. Trust in institutions, government, media, science, medicine has eroded, perhaps irrevocably. Communities have been polarized, fractured along ideological lines. The breakdown of social bonds, the scapegoating of the unvaccinated or non-compliant, has created a climate of suspicion and animosity. We were pitted against each other, encouraged to view our neighbors as potential threats. Erosion of trust. The inconsistent messaging from public health officials, the censorship of dissenting voices, and the perceived politicization of the pandemic response led to a widespread erosion of trust in institutions. Polarization. The pandemic exacerbated existing political and social divisions, creating deep rifts within communities. The debate over masks, vaccines, and lockdowns became highly politicized, further dividing society. Scapegoating. The unvaccinated were often scapegoated and demonized, blamed for the spread of the virus and the continuation of the pandemic. This created a climate of fear and animosity, further eroding social cohesion. A calculated psychological war. Was the pandemic response merely a series of misguided public health measures, or was it something more sinister? A calculated element of a psychological war, an unseen war against the human spirit. The relentless fear-mongering, the censorship of dissenting voices, the erosion of individual liberties, all serve to break down individual and collective resistance, foster learned helplessness, and instill widespread compliance. The phenomenon of mass formation psychosis, that seemingly irrational embrace of the dominant narrative by large segments of the population, suggests that our minds were indeed under attack. Reclaiming our minds and souls. The new normal is not normal, it's an aberration, a distortion of what it means to be human. We must actively work towards healing the psychological wounds of the pandemic, reclaiming genuine human connection and freedom. We must move beyond the artificially instilled fear and distrust and rebuild the social bonds that have been broken. We must resist any further attempts to control our minds and souls and reclaim our autonomy. The path forward. Resistance, revelation, and reclaiming sovereignty. We stand at a crossroads. The preceding sections have illuminated a disturbing narrative. COVID-19, potentially engineered or at least opportunistically exploited, served as a catalyst for a global power grab. Parallels with historical events like the AIDS crisis reveal a recurring pattern of fear-based control and the erosion of individual liberties. The declared agenda of the Great Reset threatens to usher in an era of global governance, diminished national sovereignty, and a technocratic New World Order, a system some describe as a modern form of communism or collectivism. But this is not a call to despair, it is a call to action. The time for passive observation is over. We must reject the paralysis of fear and embrace a spirit of relentless inquiry. Question everything. Do your own research. Seek truth relentlessly, even when it challenges the comfortable narratives presented by mainstream media and established institutions. The answers are out there, but they require vigilant searching and a willingness to confront uncomfortable realities. Actionable resistance, reclaiming our freedoms. How do we resist the ongoing erosion of our liberty? The path forward requires a multifaceted approach, a commitment to both individual and collective action. While specific tactics may vary depending on local circumstances and individual capabilities, here are some general guidelines. Support independent media and citizen journalism. The mainstream media has largely become a mouthpiece for the established narrative. Seek out alternative sources of information, independent journalists, researchers, and commentators who are willing to challenge the official story. Support these voices through subscriptions, donations, and amplification of their message. Build strong local communities and parallel structures. The strength of any resistance movement lies in its grassroots organization. Build strong relationships with your neighbors, support local businesses, and create parallel structures that operate outside the control of the established system. This could include community gardens, alternative healthcare networks, and independent educational initiatives. Practice civil disobedience against perceived unjust laws or mandates. Nonviolent resistance has a long and powerful history of challenging unjust authority. Consider engaging in acts of civil disobedience, peaceful protests, boycotts, or noncompliance with perceived laws or mandates. Be mindful of potential consequences and act with courage and conviction. Advocate vociferously for free speech and medical freedom. The right to express dissenting opinions and make informed decisions about your own health care are fundamental freedoms that must vigorously be defended. Speak out against censorship. Support organizations that advocate for free speech and resist any attempts to mandate medical interventions. Hold power accountable. Demand transparency from your elected officials and hold them accountable for their actions. Support candidates who champion individual liberty and limited government. Advocate for policies that protect freedom and promote a more just and equitable society. Remember, they rely on your compliance and your ignorance. Knowledge is power, and resistance is our civic duty. Monarch Holdings International, a resource for the awakening. In this information war, organizations like Monarch Holdings International, monarchholdingsinternational.com, play a vital role. They serve as a crucial resource for allies and those who dare to question and actively fight for truth and liberty. By providing platforms for dissenting voices, supporting independent journalism, and promoting freedom-oriented initiatives, they empower individuals to resist the forces of control and reclaim their sovereignty. The fight for freedom is not over, it's evolving. We must remain vigilant and courageous and steadfast in our commitment to reclaiming individual and collective sovereignty against the perceived globalist authoritarian threat. Keep looking, keep questioning, keep your powder dry. I'm the cigarette smoking man. Thanks for being with me.